What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Ian's Life. Today, we've got the wings in the shop, and we're taking a look at what's next on the Rockhopper. Stay tuned. So what are we doing with the wings? There's a whole lot of stuff I have to do here. As you can see, they're generally speaking in pretty good shape, especially compared to what we've done on the fuselage. So we're going to attempt to minimize the amount of changes we're doing to them, but there are some changes coming. So things that have to be done in order. First off, to make sure that the wings are good, there are some reinforcement pieces down these tubular spars, front and rear, about halfway down there where the struts pick up on the wing. There's some plywood reinforcements in each spar. Have to check and make sure those are good. Make sure that they haven't suffered any moisture damage or anything else in the time that the aircraft's been sitting. Once I've confirmed that all four of those are good, so 2 on each wing, then I need to look at removing these fuel tanks and replacing them with some new ones. Unfortunately, these are not ethanol safe tanks, so I have to remove them and put some new tanks in. Also, I'm going to larger tanks because these old tanks were designed for a little 2-stroke and I have a very large 4-stroke going on. After that, we're going to get into modifications. Yes, like everything else I do, this is going to be pretty heavily modified. Specifically, and I won't go into details on what we're doing yet, we'll save that for later, the flaperons are going away. I am not a huge fan of them, so those have to come off, and I will talk about what we're doing to replace them later on. But flaperons are going away. There's a few other spots that are going to get changed, but for now, let's see about getting some inspection cameras sent down these spars and check out these reinforcement pieces. Okay, and this is what I was talking about here. So here on my laptop, I have the view from my inspection camera I can rotate around here, and what you're looking at is the end view of a piece of plywood that is the reinforcing stiffener in there on the right where the, I pointed them out earlier, the struts come in. So that piece of plywood's there. You can actually kind of see, let me see if I can get this on screen. You can kind of see over here on screen, that's rivets and glue where the pickup for the strut is actually attached to the aluminum spar. And the critical piece we're looking for on all of this is if you look at this piece of plywood, look at how nice and shiny that is. That is, there's no fuzz on it like it's gotten water on it. There's no sign of it deteriorating in there. Nothing broken, nothing unfortunate. And this is exactly what we want to see. We want to make sure that piece is in good shape. I can kind of get a side view. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to get past this piece with the camera. It tends to get hung up. But you can get a little bit of a side view of the piece of wood. And again, no signs of damage or anything unfortunate down there. So this is all good. This is the front spar that I'm looking at. I've already sent a camera down the rear spar previously. Everything looked good there. So at this point, I can say that this wing, the left-hand wing, is in good shape. And that's good because while both wings did make contact with the ground in the ground loop incident that the aircraft suffered, this one is the one that took the most damage. It has the little broken support for the flaperon out here from whiplash, fairly typical thing. And like both of them do, it has kind of a chewed up area where when the landing gear failed, this ate some dirt and chewed up fabric. That's not a big deal. But what we were concerned about, or one of the multiple things we were concerned about, was that potentially when this happened, it could have shocked or otherwise damaged something down in here. And since damage in many places is not absolutely critical in that it will not induce a critical failure in flight, failure of either of the support points on the main spars here, those will cause a major failure. So I was quite concerned about those. I've now, I feel quite good about what we've got. So I can comfortably continue to move on with the repair and modification of these wings and use them in my project. Or excuse me, of this wing so far, and we'll check the other wing here in a minute. So with the flapper on off, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this original fiberglass tank out that we have to remove. We're going to start by, in fact we've already started a little bit here, we're going to peel up this covering material, peel that back along here. The objective being that when the new tank goes in, I want to put a piece of sheet metal over the top, screwed on, so that we actually have access to the tank and can inspect and maintain it later. So with that in mind, I want a removable panel here. And I don't want to interrupt our covering out here in the open areas where I know this is quite dirty and doesn't look very good, but if I clean it up, looks fine. No need to recover this, just need to peel this back. So we've pulled the covering off of the first third of the wing, and you can start to see what we're going to be working with here. This is the original fiberglass tanks. These use a type of resin that is not ethanol compatible, so this has to come out. Unfortunately, as is par for the course with this project, we found some things we weren't expecting. Notably, I was expecting a much less substantial attach point between the tanks and, or tank in this case, and the spars. However, if you look on the back here, the fiberglass for this tank goes the whole way around the aft spar, and I'm sure same sort of thing on the front because I can't feel a gap in here. So, how are we going to deal with this? Well, this tank was already going to be going to an aluminum replacement tank, which I'll be making. It's going to be a custom item. This isn't something we're buying off the shelf. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to cut these tanks out, or more to the point, I'm going to cut back pretty close to the spars. It would be almost impossible to remove all the fiberglass back at the back. So we'll go ahead and just cut these back and leave the fiberglass on there to be safe and build our new tanks around that. In addition, the new tanks are going to be larger. This is only a 10-gallon tank, so we're going to bring tanks the whole way out here. This adds another third. That brings us up to roughly a 15-gallon tank. Two 15-gallon tanks plus a 5 or 10-gallon header tank gets me the kind of fuel capacity I want for the aircraft. Should be good. We're trying to, we'll see how much of the covering material we can retain. I've left this little piece right here. It'll obviously be cut back, but I'm trying not to cut any more than I have to, with the idea that just maybe I can save some of this stuff out here for later on. So cut this guy out. Then I can start looking at shapes for the new tank and start considering some of our other changes to the trailing edge. Alright, so off camera we went ahead and took the covering off the top of the wing. You've just seen the footage of us pulling the covering off the bottom, and we started to take a look at a few more things. For starters, we've pulled a single piece of the trailing edge off here. Ultimately, all of that is going to be coming off. But the big reason we did this was twofold. One, some of the changes that we're doing are just going to require entirely too much work for us to try and keep any of the original covering. But as an added bonus, this gives us a chance to inspect some things. Some important stuff like our strut mounts here. Those are fortunately in great shape. We've inspected those, really happy to see that. However, we have had some surprises down here that I'm glad we pulled off the covering for. For instance, there's a glue joint at every rib where it contacts a spar, and you can see this one, if I can get this in frame here. Yeah, that's completely loose. That's the worst of the bunch, but there are just a few areas in here where the cap strips here are a little loose. There's a few on down. Logically, because the contact happened on the tip, as you get further down the wing, it gets better. But we did find a few little pieces here and there that we're gonna need to glue. So I'm glad we pulled the covering off. Now that we've had a chance to look at all of the damage and assess what we have here, we're gonna go ahead and start making some of our modifications to the wing. Alright, so with the trailing edge off, I'm gonna take a second and jump over to my computer and show you just what we're doing, because this is gonna make a lot more sense if you understand my strategy for the modifications on the wing. Alright, so now that we're in the CAD system real quick, let me show you what we're looking at. This is the original rib for the Avid. We traced it out, digitized it, brought it in. Here's the flaperon mount. Here, front spar, rear spar, our lightning holes. And this is pretty darn accurate. So what are we doing with this? Well, for changing it pretty substantially, reason being that I am not a big fan of several parts of the design. First and foremost being the airfoil choice. The Avid uses a very heavily undercambered airfoil. The thick point of the airfoil is fairly far forward on it. And this is something that, unfortunately, you're going to have to take a little bit on faith of my knowledge, or alternately don't believe me and wait and we'll see how it flies when it's all said and done. But I've designed a lot of model airplanes and flown even more, hundreds of different types, enough so that I have a very good feeling for what different airfoils are going to do. This one, I expect to brake to stall just a little bit earlier and a little bit more abrupt than I'd like. And it's also a well-known fact that due to the undercamber, the Avid runs into a wall at about 100 miles an hour and really does not want to go faster than that, because the amount of drag it generates by generating lift curves way up above 100. And so even with more power, you're not going to go much faster. So what are we changing? Well, we're going to take this stock airfoil and we're going to cut it down till it looks like this. Top section here is the same as it was. These bottom lines right here are also the same as they were, but we've expanded our holes the whole way to the bottom and we've taken the entire trailing edge off. Why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that so we can add these additional pieces on. We've got a new front section right here. At the moment, we're thinking this is going to be hot wired foam with a sheet metal covering over it to form the new leading edge, new trailing edge, or sorry, why am I saying trailing edge? The entire bottom and new trailing edge is going to be plywood, just like the original rib, and it's going to be glued on. All of these will be glued together to form something that looks about like this. This also shows some additional things like the new cap strips and a couple other little features we're going to be adding. But this new airfoil has a high point slightly further back, a little bit thicker. I like the profile better, slightly less, well, a lot less undercamber. And it's also going to be a little bit deeper. This is going to get us more wing area. It's going to get us more wing area in the back, which is a good thing. And the new profile should stall in a way I like. Also notable, no more flaperon brackets. Reason being, no more flaperons. That's right. I am doing away with the flaperons and going with traditional ailerons and flaps. Dirty little secret, there's a couple things I'm not that fond of about the Kit Fox or Avid design, one of which is the flaperons. I'm going to do another video at some point talking about what I like and don't like about the Kit Fox and Avid designs, so We'll leave the reasons for future, but just know that due to those reasons, I'm changing over to traditional surfaces. As a matter of fact, I'm basically borrowing the design and hardware from the Rans S6, which I own, which uses a 1/2-inch tube at the back, an aluminum tube, to form a trailing edge, and the hinges mount directly to that, and I'll probably just be buying those hinges directly from Rans. It saves me fabricating my own parts when somebody else already makes them. So this new airfoil should give me the flight qualities I'm looking for in an aircraft, and now that we've had a chance to better understand why we're cutting everything down on the ribs, let's go back out to the shop and actually get down to work. And now that you know the extent of the insanity that we're going for, this will all make a little more sense. Obviously, we've removed the trailing edge, so that's no longer a factor with the new trailing edge going in. We have to make our pieces that are the add-ons for the bottom of the wing, glue those on. But before we do that, we have to do a couple of things. For one, take our original, this one's broken, but the flapper-on holders, those have to come off of a few ribs. And then one of the other things we're looking at doing is we have these cap strips on all of the ribs currently. And while technically we could leave them in, they're not hurting anything. What they are hurting is my gross weight, or actually my empty weight, excuse me. So they don't weigh much, but you know what? It's just an attitude thing. I don't like material in there that's doing nothing, because now we're going to have add-ons out to here. So we're going to look at routing these off. There's some cleanup there. I've already talked about some of the damage. You can see things like the crack in here. We're going to have a couple of pieces of repair, a little bit of glue to do to reattach some of the loose ribs. So there's some stuff for us to do there. Then, and my phone rings. Okay, so while I'm away for a minute, my father decides to make me feel lazy by working on my airplane while I'm not around. He's using a battery-powered router to knock those cap strips down like I talked about earlier. This was a quick way to remove a whole lot of material off of the wing quickly, and while we do need to do some cleanup after it's done, the end results are very pretty. Alright, next thing we have to do, pull the wing out and get the tank cut out of it, so we can take a look at what's inside of there and figure out how we're going to be mounting our new tank in place. So now we've got the tank cut out and you can really see what we're dealing with in here. This brown resin is the reason that we had to do this in the first place. This is not ethanol safe resin, and we could not have run auto gas like we need to in here. So I've actually left, this was a decision we kind of made mid-cutting process, a pretty good lip of fiberglass. Reason being, this gives me a very convenient way to mount the new aluminum tanks down, because I can build off of this and build some hard points. And also, this wraps around, this is fiberglass, the whole way around the back of the spar. And trying to get that off of the spar without damaging it basically would have been impossible. So just as easy to leave this in place, give me some nice, and these are really thick. It was thinner material further back out here, but up near the spar, this is really thick and heavy, and it'll give me a great place to mount my new tanks. Interestingly enough, the two ribs here and at the root are actually entirely fiberglass. There's no wood in them at all. So we're gonna have to build on top of them with our wood. That's not a problem because they're no longer going to be a part of the tank. So we'll probably be cutting this back a little later, but I just make conservative cuts everywhere just because it's easy to cut, not so easy to put material back. More work done. We've now got the tops and the bottom sections routed on the ribs. We just have a little bit more routing to do up in the front. That won't take but a couple of minutes, and these are going to be back to just one width. Then we can start building them up. Unfortunately, we're really hoping to retain this nice fiberglass tip piece here, but it's just not going to work out. So that's also going to have to come off. And that's another day of work done. We've got the ribs back down to their base state where we can build on them. No more cap strips anywhere except for some little sections up in here. Those are going to get left in place and new pieces put over. The wingtip's been taken off. I'm really happy with how that came clear of there. We got that cut right back to the end of the spar. So we can now start thinking about what we're going to do here when we've reshaped the wing. And with the wing back to where we're ready to start adding pieces back onto it, I think that's as good a place as any to stop this. So until next time, like, subscribe, and we've got more content like this and more flying on the way for you soon. See you next time.